You believe your success depends on talent, timing, and personal discipline. But what if I told you that your environment is either quietly building your future or slowly dismantling it? And most men never even notice which one is happening. Look around you. The conversations you tolerate, the standards you accept, the ambitions of the people closest to you. These are not neutral details. They are shaping your ceiling. Environment is not just physical space. It is mental climate. It is expectation. It is the emotional tone of your daily interactions. And that climate determines how high you believe you can rise. Have you ever entered a room where everyone spoke boldly about growth and felt your own confidence expand? And then entered another room where doubt and complaint dominated and felt your ambition shrink? That is environment at work. Most men try to improve themselves while remaining in environments that reward mediocrity. They attempt to build discipline while surrounded by distraction. They attempt to think big while immersed in small thinking. You cannot consistently outperform your environment. You either elevate it or it will eventually reduce you. This is why cutting certain influences is not optional. It is strategic. Not everyone deserves proximity to your goals. Not every voice deserves access to your plans. The wrong environment normalizes hesitation. It makes ambition seem excessive. It rewards safety and questions boldness. Over time, you adjust, not because you are weak, but because repetition reshapes belief. Now consider the opposite, an environment where ideas are challenged constructively, where standards are high, where progress is expected. In such a place, mediocrity feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is growth, and growth requires friction with higher standards. Most people fear leaving familiar environments, even if those environments are limiting. Familiarity feels secure, but familiarity is not advancement. To win, you must sometimes distance yourself from influences that dilute your ambition. This does not require hostility, it requires clarity. And beyond cutting, you must build. There is a principle far more powerful than individual effort, a principle that multiplies intelligence, strengthens resolve, and accelerates progress. It is the deliberate creation of a mastermind. When two or more minds unite in harmony toward a definite purpose, a third force emerges, a collective intelligence, a synergy that no individual could generate alone. This is not philosophy, it is practical law. When you align yourself with disciplined, purpose-driven individuals, your thinking sharpens. Your standards rise, your excuses weaken. Imagine regularly surrounding yourself with people who refuse to tolerate mediocrity, who challenge your assumptions, who expect you to act boldly. How long could you remain stagnant in such an environment? You become what you consistently associate with. That is not superstition, it is psychological influence reinforced by repetition. If you remain in environments that feed doubt, you will struggle to sustain confidence. If you immerse yourself in environments that reward growth, confidence becomes natural. In this lesson, you will learn what must be cut, what must be built, and how to intentionally design an environment that multiplies your potential instead of suffocating it. Your surroundings are not accidental. They are either chosen or tolerated. And the difference between those two states determines whether you drift or develop power. The question is no longer whether environment matters. The question is, are you willing to change yours to win? Environment is not confined to walls, streets, or buildings. It is the mental atmosphere in which you dwell daily. It is the tone of conversation that surrounds you. It is the level of expectation that feels normal in your presence. That atmosphere, repeated without interruption, shapes belief more powerfully than occasional inspiration ever could. A man seldom declares openly that he has lowered his standards. Instead, he adjusts gradually. When hesitation is common around him, hesitation becomes reasonable. When complaint is frequent, complaint feels justified. When small ambitions are applauded, large ambitions appear excessive. Repetition is the sculptor of belief. The mind, hearing the same tone daily, accepts it as truth. If the prevailing mood is cautious and doubtful, confidence must fight for survival. If the prevailing mood is bold and forward-looking, courage grows naturally. Consider the difference between entering a room where men discuss expansion, improvement, and enterprise, and entering another where the conversation revolves around grievance and limitation. In the first, your thinking expands. In the second, it contracts. That is environment at work. Andrew Carnegie began his career in modest circumstances, yet he sought association with men who thought in terms of growth. Their conversation was not centered upon scarcity, but upon possibility. The climate of expectation lifted his own belief. Contrast this with the man who attempts to cultivate ambition while immersed in surroundings that reward comfort. His ideas are treated as unrealistic. His drive is questioned. Over time, he begins to temper his speech. He reduces the size of his declared aims. This adjustment is rarely conscious. It is the result of continuous exposure. The mind adapts to avoid friction. It chooses belonging over boldness if vigilance is not exercised. Group expectation exerts invisible pressure. If mediocrity is common, excellence appears extreme. If stagnation is normal, movement appears unnecessary. The individual slowly conforms, not from weakness, but from repetition. 10 years may be lost before a man recognizes that his ceiling was not determined by talent, but by tolerated climate. 20 years may fade an atmosphere that quietly discouraged initiative. 30 years may pass before he dares to seek higher standard. Examine your own environment carefully. What is considered admirable? Is discipline respected? Is ambition encouraged? Or is comfort celebrated and caution praised? Others notice when a man alters his climate, his language shifts. He declines to participate in trivial complaint. He begins to speak of plans rather than problems. His presence acquires seriousness. Such change may unsettle those accustomed to lower tone, yet it attracts those who share elevated expectation. Environment reshaped deliberately begins to draw different association. The discipline required is examination without sentiment. Familiarity must not blind you. Comfort must not disguise limitation. Ask honestly, does this climate strengthen my purpose or dilute it? Affirm daily, I choose a climate that elevates my ambition. I refuse to accept ceilings imposed by repetition. My environment reflects my definite purpose. Repetition of this declaration instructs the mind to observe surroundings consciously. Awareness precedes alteration. You cannot consistently outperform the mental atmosphere you inhabit. If it is weak, you must strengthen it or depart from it. If it is strong, you must align with it fully. Winning demands friction with higher standard. In a climate where excellence is expected, mediocrity feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is growth. By altering climate early, you reclaim years otherwise surrendered to unnoticed decline. 10 years saved by choosing bold atmosphere. 20 by distancing from small expectation. 30 by sustaining elevated environment without compromise. Environment is not accidental. It is either tolerated or designed. The climate you accept becomes the ceiling you believe possible. Raise it deliberately. For once the atmosphere shifts upward, your own belief rises with it. And when belief rises, action strengthens. When action strengthens, achievement follows. After you recognize that climate shapes belief, you must confront a more uncomfortable truth. Not every influence in your life is neutral. Some voices strengthen conviction, others dilute it. And dilution, repeated daily, weakens ambition more effectively than open opposition. A single doubtful remark rarely destroys a dream. But repeated exposure to skepticism reshapes your self-image. When you hear often enough that success is unlikely, boldness begins to feel impractical. The mind absorbs tone even when it resists the words. There is a difference between honest counsel and habitual discouragement. Honest counsel questions to strengthen your plan. Habitual discouragement questions to reduce your aim. One refines ambition, the other erodes it. Not every voice deserves access to your plans. Some individuals, though well-meaning, speak from their own fear. They project limitation disguised as realism. If you invite such voices repeatedly into your inner circle, their repetition becomes climate. Consider Henry Ford during his early efforts. He faced criticism from many quarters. Yet he did not dwell among those who magnified impossibility. He reduced exposure to those who rehearsed defeat and increased proximity to those who supported execution. If you must defend your ambition daily, energy drains. The mind grows fatigued from constant justification. Momentum weakens. It is difficult to build boldly while simultaneously arguing for your right to try. Strategic distance does not require hostility. It requires clarity. You may respect another without adopting his limitation. You may value a relationship while reducing exposure to discouraging tone. Others may interpret your distance as change in loyalty. They may question your seriousness. Yet your responsibility is not to maintain universal comfort. It is to protect your purpose. 10 years may be lost to habitual exposure to doubt. 20 to constant immersion in caution disguised as wisdom. 30 to living under the weight of repeated discouragement. Selective hearing is discipline. You cannot prevent all negative opinion, but you can determine which opinions you reinforce. Refuse to replay discouraging words in private. Replace them immediately with affirmation of purpose. The subconscious mind accepts repetition as instruction. If you repeat criticism internally, you amplify it. If you replace it with conviction, you strengthen resilience. Observe how men of strong purpose behave. They listen, but they do not internalize every voice. They weigh counsel carefully. They reject tone that contradicts their definite aim. Others respond differently when you guard your ambition. Some withdraw, unable to influence you as before. Others grow curious, sensing firmness in your stance. Strength attracts respect. The discipline required is awareness of influence. Notice how certain conversations affect your energy. Do you leave feeling expanded or diminished? That response reveals impact. Affirm daily. I protect my ambition from weakening influence. I accept constructive counsel and reject habitual doubt. My purpose remains intact. Repeat this declaration until it becomes reflex. The mind must be trained to guard its climate deliberately. You cannot eliminate every opposing voice, but you can reduce its repetition, and repetition determines belief. When you cut dilution, your ambition strengthens naturally. You no longer waste energy defending it. You invest energy advancing it. The difference becomes visible over time. Your speech grows confident, your actions less apologetic, your decisions more decisive. Saving 10 years begins with refusing to rehearse discouragement. Saving 20 begins with limiting proximity to habitual doubt. Saving 30 begins with sustained protection of your inner climate. Environment is shaped not only by who is present, but by whose voice you allow to echo within you. Choose carefully. For ambition, like fire, requires protection from wind that would extinguish it. Guard it and it grows. Leave it exposed to repeated doubt and it weakens. Thus, the second act of environmental mastery is cutting influences that dilute your ambition. Remove them deliberately and clarity remains. Where clarity remains, strength increases. And where strength increases, progress accelerates. After cutting the influences that weaken you, the next step is not isolation, it is construction. No man attains enduring success alone. He may initiate alone, but he multiplies power through alliance. The mastermind is not accident, it is designed environment. When two or more minds unite in harmony toward a definite purpose, a force emerges greater than any single individual could command. That force is not mystical. It is intensified expectation, sharpened thought, and multiplied courage. Harmony is essential. Discord weakens collective power. If envy, suspicion, or ego dominates, alliance falters. But when mutual respect and common aim prevail, intelligence increases. Andrew Carnegie did not attempt to master every detail of steel production personally. He united with capable men whose knowledge complemented his own. Together, they produced results far beyond solitary effort. Within such alliance, standards rise naturally. If one member grows complacent, others challenge him. Mediocrity becomes uncomfortable. Excellence becomes expected. Friction with higher standards produces growth. When you sit among disciplined individuals, your excuses weaken. When you share plans with ambitious minds, you are compelled to act. Design this association deliberately. Do not wait for it to occur by chance. Seek individuals whose ambition aligns with yours. Meet regularly. Discuss progress honestly. Demand accountability. 10 years may be saved through cooperative intelligence. Instead of repeating errors alone, you benefit from shared insight. 20 years may be gained through consistent alignment with disciplined minds. 30 through lifelong participation in purposeful alliance. Others perceive transformation when you join strong association. Your thinking sharpens, your language reflects clarity, your confidence strengthens because it is reinforced. Contribution within alliance is essential. You must bring value, not merely receive it. Cooperation multiplies only when each member invests effort and integrity. Affirm daily, I unite with disciplined minds in harmony. Together, we multiply power and accelerate progress. Repetition of this affirmation conditions expectation of cooperation. Expectation shapes action. The mastermind is environment designed to elevate. It protects against decline. It strengthens resolve during temporary defeat. Imagine 10 years spent among ambitious and disciplined companions rather than hesitant and complacent ones. Imagine 20. Imagine 30. The compounding effect is dramatic. When you build such alliance, environment becomes instrument of acceleration rather than anchor of stagnation. Thus, the third act in mastering environment is deliberate construction of harmonious association. Remove weakening climate. Replace it with strengthened alliance. For when minds unite toward common purpose, power multiplies. And multiplied power shortens the road between intention and achievement. Environment is shaped not only by who stands beside you, but by what is spoken among you. Conversation is climate in audible form. What you hear repeatedly determines what feels possible. Speech repeated daily becomes atmosphere. If the dominant subject of discussion is grievance, scarcity, and disappointment, the mind adapts to that tone. It begins to anticipate difficulty rather than opportunity. It expects limitation rather than expansion. Gossip appears harmless, yet it lowers the standard of thought. It directs attention toward personalities instead of principles. It consumes time that could strengthen plans. Trivial talk trains the mind toward trivial aim. Replace complaint with constructive planning. When problems arise, discuss solutions rather than rehearsing frustration. When obstacles appear, ask what adjustment is required rather than who is to blame. The quality of questions determines the quality of thought. Ask, why does this always happen? And you reinforce resignation. Ask, how can this strengthen my position? And you reinforce strategy. Charles M. Schwab elevated morale not through criticism, but through enthusiastic language. His speech conveyed expectation of growth. His words shaped atmosphere. When you raise the standard of conversation, you raise the standard of expectation. Others begin to anticipate progress. They measure themselves against higher tone. The man who refuses small talk and speaks of plans acquires visible authority. He is not severe, but purposeful. His presence shifts discussion toward advancement. 10 years may be saved by eliminating habitual complaint from daily dialogue. 20 by consistently steering conversation toward improvement. 30 by sustaining elevated discourse throughout career. Speech reveals belief. Belief shapes conduct. Conduct shapes result. Therefore, guard conversation as you would guard investment. Examine your own words carefully. Do they strengthen or weaken your environment? Do you rehearse defeat verbally? Or do you frame difficulty as temporary? Others respond to disciplined speech. They feel clarity in your tone. They sense seriousness in your intention. They begin to align their own language accordingly. Affirm daily. My words elevate my environment. I speak of plans, progress, and purpose. My conversation strengthens belief. Through repetition, disciplined speech becomes natural. Atmosphere improves. Expectation rises. When environment is shaped by constructive dialogue, growth accelerates. You waste fewer hours in trivial exchange. You invest more energy in advancement. Consider the cumulative effect over 10 years of refining every conversation toward higher standard. Consider 20. Consider 30. The difference between casual talk and purposeful dialogue is not merely style, it is destiny. Thus, the fourth act in mastering environment is raising the standard of daily speech. Remove gossip. Remove complaint. Replace them with vision and strategy. For conversation repeated becomes climate. Climate repeated becomes belief. Belief repeated becomes achievement. At last we arrive at the decisive point. Environment is either chosen deliberately or tolerated unconsciously. If you do not design it, you inherit it. If you do not elevate it, it will settle into the average of those around you. There is no neutrality. Conduct a ruthless inventory of your surroundings. Examine the rooms in which you spend your hours. Examine the conversations you permit. Examine the expectations considered normal. Ask plainly, does this atmosphere accelerate my rise or restrain it? Removal must be done without bitterness. You are not condemning others. You are selecting altitude. A man who desires to climb must release weight. He does not argue with the weight. He simply sets it down. Construct spaces, both physical and mental, that reflect your definite purpose. Arrange your work area to encourage focus. Fill your shelves with books that strengthen conviction. Limit exposure to disorder that scatters attention. Beyond physical space, design mental space. Establish regular association with disciplined individuals. Set standards for conversation. Insist upon progress rather than excuse. The compounding power of elevated atmosphere over years cannot be exaggerated. 10 years in disciplined climate produce visible distinction. 20, create authority. 30, establish legacy. Others will observe change. Your tone becomes steady, your plans precise, your ambition unapologetic. Some will feel inspired. Others may withdraw. Environment selects companions naturally. Eventually, you become source of higher standard. When you enter a room, conversation lifts. When you speak, expectation rises. Your presence alters climate rather than absorbing it. Guard against gradual decline. Environment, once elevated, must be maintained. Complacency invites erosion. Familiarity may dull vigilance. Continue auditing your surroundings. 10 years saved by refusing to tolerate decline. 20, preserved by sustaining constructive climate. 30, gained by lifelong commitment to deliberate design. Affirm daily. I design my surroundings to serve my purpose. I remove what weakens and strengthen what elevates. My environment accelerates my rise. Repeat this until it becomes instinctive. Let no season pass without review of your atmosphere. Remember that success is not achieved in isolation from climate. It is cultivated within it. When the air is clear, thought sharpens. When expectation is high, action strengthens. The world will not shape itself to your ambition. You must shape your world to match it. In doing so, you fulfill the promise by mastering environment, by cutting what weakens and building what strengthens. You save 10 years of unnoticed stagnation, 20 of diluted ambition, 30 of deferred greatness. Environment is ladder or anchor. Choose ladder. For the climate you build today determines the height you reach tomorrow. You may possess talent, you may cultivate discipline, you may even hold a definite purpose in writing. Yet if your environment contradicts your aim daily, your progress will be delayed, not destroyed at once, but diluted gradually. Climate erodes conviction more quietly than open failure ever could. Most men attempt to improve themselves while remaining in the same mental atmosphere that weakened them in the first place. They read powerful books, attend inspiring gatherings, and then return to rooms where doubt is rehearsed, mediocrity normalized, and ambition questioned. Inspiration fades because repetition reshapes belief. The tragedy is rarely dramatic. It is gradual adjustment. A bold idea is spoken once and met with indifference. The next time it is spoken more cautiously. Eventually it is no longer spoken at all. The ceiling lowers not because of inability, but because of atmosphere. Years disappear in this silent compromise. 10 years may pass before a man realizes he no longer speaks as boldly as he once did. 20 before he notices that his goals have shrunk to fit his surroundings. 30 before he awakens to the truth that he adapted downward to maintain comfort. Environment compounds just as surely as effort. A single day in a limiting climate seems harmless. A decade within it reshapes identity. Conversely, a decade within elevated atmosphere forges strength beyond measure. The difference between drifting within a climate and designing one is the difference between accident and intention. The drifter accepts whatever atmosphere surrounds him. The architect selects materials, arranges structure, and builds deliberately. To become architect of your environment requires courage. It demands that you evaluate relationships, habits, conversations, and spaces without sentiment clouding judgment. It requires that you ask whether your daily climate reflects your highest aim. You must not confuse comfort with compatibility. Familiarity may feel secure while quietly reducing ambition. True compatibility strengthens your purpose rather than softening it. As you design your environment deliberately, something remarkable occurs. Resistance may appear at first. Those accustomed to lower tone may question your change. Yet gradually, new associations form. Different conversations begin. Expectation rises. Others will observe your steadiness. They will sense that you no longer adjust downward for acceptance. Your speech will reveal conviction. Your actions will reveal consistency. Respect follows such clarity. In time, you become a standard rather than a follower of standards. When you enter a room, the tone shifts subtly. Complaint diminishes, conversation sharpens, your presence influences climate. This transformation does not occur overnight. It emerges through repeated selection. You decline invitations that weaken you. You accept associations that strengthen you. You refine your surroundings intentionally. The saving of 10 years occurs when you refuse to tolerate diminishing atmosphere early. The saving of 20 occurs when you sustain elevated climate despite temporary discomfort. The saving of 30 occurs when environmental mastery becomes lifelong habit. Consider the magnitude of this principle. 10 years reclaimed from mediocrity is not a small gain. 20 years redirected toward constructive growth is extraordinary. 30 years preserved from unnoticed decline is life transformed. You cannot change the entire world's climate, but you can choose the room you occupy within it. You can determine whose voices echo in your mind. You can design surroundings that reinforce rather than restrain. Remember that environment influences even when unnoticed. Therefore, vigilance must become permanent. Conduct periodic review. Ask whether your atmosphere remains aligned with your definite purpose. If decline has crept in, correct it promptly. Do not wait for discouragement to deepen. Remove influences that weaken you before they take root. The disciplined individual does not blame climate. He shapes it. He does not complain about mediocrity. He refuses to dwell within it. He does not argue endlessly. He selects altitude. There will always be those who prefer familiar limitation. You need not condemn them. Simply do not adopt their ceiling. Affirm daily, I am architect of my environment. I remove what weakens my ambition. I construct climate that strengthens my purpose. Repeat this until it becomes reflex. Let your choices reflect this authority. Let your associations mirror this conviction. Over years, the difference between designed environment and tolerated environment becomes dramatic. One produces stagnation masked as comfort. The other produces growth reinforced by expectation. The world may not recognize immediately what you have done, yet results will reveal it. Steady progress, expanding influence, strengthened confidence. These are fruits of elevated climate. Do not underestimate the power of atmosphere. It is subtle yet relentless. It either lifts you quietly or lowers you gradually. The ultimate question is not whether environment matters. It is whether you will command it. You stand at a point of decision. Continue adapting to surrounding tone or elevate it deliberately. Continue inhabiting climate by accident or design it with intention. The years ahead will answer that choice. Say finally with conviction, I choose altitude over familiarity. I design my climate. I refuse ceilings not of my own making. Hold to this declaration daily. Let it guide your associations, your conversations, your surroundings. For the altitude of your life is determined not by occasional inspiration, but by the climate you choose consistently. And when you master that climate, you do more than improve your circumstances. You accelerate your destiny. 10 years saved, 20 reclaimed, 30 redirected, all through the deliberate shaping of environment. Choose wisely.